Welcome, and thank you for clicking on this video. In this one, we're going to be checking out the Gretsch Streamliner Jet Bass. It's supposed to be the new and improved model from the G2220. But is it? Let's check it out. So several years ago, Gretsch had a pretty substantial marketing and PR boo-boo where on the G2220 bass, the pickups were advertised to be humbuckers, but Low-End Lobster revealed that they were not humbuckers and they were actually single coils. So as a result, owners of G2220s were able to get some kind of discount or kind of rebate from Fender and Gretsch. And I actually know a few players who owned that bass and ended up getting like Fender branded sweaters and other swag like that. So I think some of the updates on this bass are to kind of move on from the past and get on with the future. So here is the new Streamliner bass from Gretsch. Now there are a few differences compared to the G2220. So let's talk about them. On this Streamliner bass, the body is nato, as is the neck. So both the body wood and the neck wood are both nato. In comparison, the G2220 had a basswood body and a maple neck. And these are all from the Gretsch website, so you can check those out. The fretboard on both of the basses is still Laurel, but on the new Streamliner bass, there's this nice kind of cream colored binding that runs down the neck, and the fretboard dots have now been replaced with these semicircles, which is kind of a throwback to some of the vintage Gretsch stylings that you could find on their vintage guitars. So that's a nice touch. The nut previously used to be synthetic. Now this is marketed as a bone nut. Some differences in the electronics, naturally following the PR disaster. So these pickups are now advertised to be single coils. Even though they look like mini humbuckers, they are single coils. And indeed, there is single coil hum and noise, and I'll demonstrate that later. The control panel is also different. On the G2220, it was volume tone with a pickup selector switch. Here is volume tone. So volume for the neck pickup, volume for the bridge pickup, and master tone. So that part is quite different. They kept the same kind of Fender style bridge. They kept the pickguard, and the headstock design is more or less the same. The scale length of this bass is 30 inches. The G2220 was advertised to be 30.3 inches. Close enough. The string spacing, due to the Fender style bridge, is 19 millimeters, and this has a 1.56 inch nut width. This particular example was very light, and on my scale, it came in at 6 pounds and just shy of 12 ounces. So very light. The available colors on the Streamliner bass are also different compared to the G2220, but I would refer you to the Gretsch website for a better description and kind of photographs of those colors, as those tend to change with time. All right, let's have a listen to this bass. Let's start with both pickups all the way up, and let's start with a tone knob all the way up as well. Let's roll the tone knob down to about 50%. Both pickups. Let's roll the toe knob all the way off now, both pickups. Let's now just hear the neck pickup. Let's roll that toe knob all the way back up to 100. Neck, all the way up. Let's roll the toe knob down to 50%. Neck pickup. Let's roll the toe knob all the way off. Neck pickup. Let's now just hear the bridge pickup. Let's roll the toe knob all the way back up to 100. Bridge pickup. As you can hear, I haven't touched anything else in the signal chain, but there's quite a bit of a signal difference between the different pickups. Let's keep going with the bridge pickup and let's turn the toe knob down to 50%. And toe knob all the way off. Bridge pickup. All right, let's now hear the Streamliner bass in the context of a drum track, and let's see how the different sounds blend in with the drums. So we have in the first half, both pickups, neck pickup, then bridge pickup with the toe knob at 100%. And then in the second half, we have the same pickup configuration, but with the toe knob at 50. All right, here we go. I hope you enjoyed those playing examples. Please let me know what you thought of the tones by leaving a comment below. All right, well, let's start with the construction, the fit, and the finish. Overall, I think for the asking price of about 450 Canadian dollars, the finish is pretty good. It's a glossy urethane, so there is a little bit of stickiness on the neck, but overall, I think the finish was well applied. The neck is a bolt-on. However, the neck pocket here, it was a little too big for the neck. And unfortunately, I was able to squeeze a piece of paper on both the treble and the bass side between the neck and the body. Have a look at these photos. So I think from a construction neck pocket point of view, that was a bit on the sloppy side. Okay, let's move up the neck. The scarf joint there is pretty visible. Some makers spend a little more time making that less visually apparent, but the contrast in the wood is pretty striking there. And while we're here, you will notice with this tilt-back headstock, there is no volute here. Now, the problem with that is, especially if you know kind of Gibson Les Paul and SG owners, the neck breakage point is always there. That's going to be the weakest point because it's taking all that pressure from the strings. So to gain extra stability in this tilt-back angle, a lot of builders put a volute there to add some extra structural integrity. So I'll give you an example. On my 5-string here, which is a fancy wood 5-string, there is a sizable volute right there. And this neck has been rock solid. Similarly, on this Ibanez semi-hollow bass here, is a smaller volute compared to my 5-string, but there's still one there. Does this mean the neck is unstable? No, the bass has stayed in tune and, I haven't broken it. But I think it's a missed opportunity there from a construction point of view. But of course, if you were to ask the factory workers in China to put a volute there, that's going to take more time, it's going to take more money, unless you can find a way to program it into the CNC, which is probably the way they would have to do it, but that's still more time and money. Okay, now this leads to the next construction problem. If you look at the tuners here, these tuners are not in line with each other. So as a visual reference, here's a picture that I took from the Anderton's website advertising the Streamliner bass, and I've put in some lines so you can see what I mean by the tuners supposed to be in line with each other. Have a look. So this E-string tuner is going that way and is not in line with any of the other ones. So I think that set screw is put in the wrong place. But is it just this one? So I found another image off the internet from another guitar store advertising a brand new Streamliner Gretsch. And have a look at this photo. So not just this one. That kind of alignment issue was present on that one as well. So I don't know whether or not these screw holes are kind of misprogrammed into the CNC machine, or maybe these two examples were built on the same day. I don't know, but I visually find that less ideal. Okay, let's talk about the nut while we're still on the construction fit and finish. This is supposed to be a bone nut, and I'm not saying that it's not, but it's the kind of whitest in color looking bone nut I've ever seen. It's very, very white, and bone nuts usually have a kind of a yellow tint to them. My F-Bass here has a bone nut, and that is clearly way more yellow. As well, the uniformity of the color is also different on a bone nut. And this one almost looked like it was like bleached white or something. So, I don't know. Okay, let's move on to the hardware. Nothing wrong with this Fender bridge. You get nice 19mm string spacing out of it. They're reliable, they're adjustable, you can intonate it. It's great. Out of the box, this particular bass came, it was playable, but the action was so low, three of the four strings buzzed a lot. I did have to raise the saddles quite a bit. So out of the box, not so good. But with these types of bridges, they're pretty easy to adjust, and I was able to get the action still nice and low, very playable. But I was able to do it, and I think that's in part due to, this style of bridge being really easy to adjust. The problem is, I think on this style of bass, I don't think it visually fits. I know the G2220 had the same thing, and I like Fender bridges. I put Fender bridges on my kind of Fender-shaped objects. So don't get me wrong, I like this bridge. But I think visually, it looks more like we put it on from a bin of parts instead of it kind of being a visual package. Along with the hardware, these tuners are okay. They kept their stability, but the feel when you turn them, they're a bit loosey-goosey. You can tighten them. They felt a little on the flimsier side. Electronics. So these are now clearly advertised to be single coils, and indeed they are, because you get single coil hum. So if I were to have both pickups up, it's quiet. But if I were to turn one off, there's the hum. I mean, it's not terrible, and it's not super noisy, but you have to be aware of that going in, because some venues are noisier than others, and if you like to favor one pickup over the other, there will be single coil hum. Talking about the pickups, these are considerably hotter than my other basses, and granted, my first video on the G2220 was probably 2 or 3 years ago now, but if my memory serves me correctly, these are a lot hotter and a lot louder compared to the ones in the G2220. Tonality-wise, I find these pickups to be quite a bit brighter, more forward, and more aggressive sounding compared to the single coils in the G2220. They're actually very bitey and aggressive, and with the tone knob all the way up, and both pickups, they're quite aggressive and bitey sounding, and depending on the genre of music you're playing, that could be a great thing. On this style of bass though, where kind of aesthetically is more kind of vintage leaning, I feel from a tonality point of view, I don't think it suits the bass. I think it's too aggressive sounding. However, if you're playing with a pick and more kind of rock, punk, heavier styles, it could be right up your alley. But with the tone knob all the way up, it's a bit on the clacky side for me. While we're on the topic of the tone knob and the control panels, I think having volume tone is a welcome change compared to having a pickup selector switch. I hate switches. I disable them whenever I can, and I personally prefer volume tone setups. So I think that's outstanding. The tone knob on this bass, however, I don't know what value the capacitor is, but I feel the range of tones from 0 to 100 is pretty narrow. So if you're looking for a big variety of sounds, you might want to experiment with different capacitor values, or even pot values for that matter, in this particular bass, because stock out of the box, there's not a lot of tonal variety in that tone knob, as hopefully you can appreciate from the playing clips. As well, from a visual aesthetic point of view, I think the three knobs I think they're too close together, just from a visual aesthetic point of view. There's tons of room in the cavity. Oh, I'm all tangled up here. There's tons of room in the cavity, so they could have spaced them out. Maybe put the volume knob over here, tone knob further away. These just visually look too cramped to me. And even if you're trying to change volume knobs kind of on the fly, yeah, they're too close to each other. Turning the bass around, looking at the cavity, I put up a picture here. This cavity is completely unshielded. Especially in a bass with single coils and advertised to be single coils, I think shielding the cavity is something you ought to do. And unfortunately, that was a missed opportunity there. All right, well, let's see how this bass balances both on my lap and on a strap. So in the playing position, because there is no upper horn, it's Les Paul style that way, it does have a tendency to dive a bit. Although, having played the 2220, I will say this one dives less, at least this particular one. Neck dives less than the G2220. Let's try it on a strap. All right, overall playing comfort. I think this body is more comfortable than I thought it was going to be. In the lap, I was really afraid that not having a forearm contour here, because there's a slab body, there's no contour at all, and not having a kind of a tummy cut here would really affect kind of playing comfort. But in the seated position it's actually quite comfortable. And I think the biggest part of that is the weight of this one, at least, is under 7 pounds. So I think that kind of makes up for it not having a forearm contour. And I get it. Like the original vintage kind of dual jet guitar models didn't have one either, to my knowledge. So I think they're just trying to keep the overall aesthetic to the original styling. The neck is more D-shaped than what I would like. I personally prefer kind of C-shaped necks. I like having like a nice rounded apex for my hand to fit on, and for my thumb when I'm playing higher up. But this neck is more D-shaped, I feel. And as a result, I feel it has kind of rounder shoulders. So my thumb is in slightly different places than what I would like. But I also have pretty strong preferences about what I want my necks to feel like. So maybe that won't affect other people. I'm not sure. But the nut width is good. So first position is very playable. And here with the cutaway, you have access to all of the frets past 12. So it's a pretty comfy neck, but for me, I would have preferred a more rounded C over the broader shoulder D. All right, well, in summary, this bass cost me about 450 Canadian dollars before taxes and shipping. And for that price, it's pretty good. You know, there are no sharp fret ends. The frets overall were relatively level for instruments of this price point. there are a few construction issues, like I mentioned, but overall it stayed in tune and it plays really well, and it sounds okay. The pickups for me are a little too clacky and a little too aggressive for what I like to hear. This bass has kind of, when you look at it, at least my imagination thinks a more rounded, vintage inspired sound. And here, instead, you get a more strident, bright, clacky sound. So I think there's a bit of a visual to tonality clash there for me. But they did make some improvements, they being Gretsch, compared to G2220. They now have volume, tone, instead of having a pickup selector switch. They've improved the visual appointments by having binding and these semicircle inlays, which kind of go back to the vintage styling that Gretsch had in the 50s and 60s. So overall, I think it's a good looking bass. Whether or not it fits what you are looking for and what you are sonically seeking is a different story. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time.